Sacred Space on West Limerick 102.
So welcome back again to the second part of Sacred Space on West Limerick 102. My name is John Kelly, joined on the other end telephone by Shane Ambrose, and delighted really to welcome into the studio again David Bracken, who is the archivist for the Limerick Diocesan. Shane, just before yourself and David started speaking, I just had to ask David, and David might share with the rest of the listeners, what's an archivist, please?
Well, I work in the attic of the diocesan office.
A very lonely place.
It's lovely. But so if you think of your own attic, and if you're fortunate enough to have lived in a house that maybe your parents and grandparents before you have lived in, you think of all of the things that inhabit your attic, all of those dusty boxes that are filled with letters of long ago, love letters and letters from brothers and sisters who emigrated to America and England and all of these places. I'm the man who tries to put some smock on that collection. If you think of the centuries that the diocese has been in existence now, our collections don't go back to the very beginning, but we have a rich body of historical material relating to the Diocese of Limerick, its people and its priests. And I'm in the very, very privileged position to be trying to make that material, to make sense of it, with a view ultimately to making it available to researchers, to the people of the diocese, to historians, and really to anyone who has an interest. So I've just finished the catalogue of Bishop John Young, and it was published in late 2015. So that's quite a rich late 18th century collection. So as I say, that's kind of what I'm at, as I say, very happy in the attic of the diocese.
Now there you are, Shane, eat your hat out.
Well, there you go. How are you, Shane? Are you well?
I'm not too bad, David, and listen, it's great to have you on this morning's programme. Now, we brought you on for a purpose, of course, but you've been a busy man.
Oh, well, yes, keeping me out of trouble they are, but...
they're keeping you out of trouble, is right, because you said you published that notice about the collection back in late 2015, and we're just after having the official launch of your latest book. Now, I should say, of course, you were the editor of the latest book.
That's correct, yeah.
The End of All Things Earthly.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what it's about?
Back in October, Bishop Leahy over coffee. Bishop Leahy has great enthusiasm and energy, and he breezed in for a cup of coffee, and he was scratching his head, and he was saying, David, I was thinking, and when I hear him, and I was getting a bit nervous, but he said to me, he thought there was need for that there was something missing in all of the commemoration and the discussion and the reflection that's been going on in this centenary year, that there was a little gap, specifically around the faith experience or the spirituality of the leaders of the Rising. And he kind of twisted my arm. You can refuse your line manager, but you can't refuse your bishop. So this little book, The End of All Things Earthly, is a collection of 17 little pen pictures, very short pen pictures, that focus on the faith, the spiritual life of the 16 executed leaders. It's a very accessible. One of the staff in the office said it's very unthreatening. It's only 90 pages in length. But we asked contributors, and you're right, I edited the collection because the time frame being what it was, I mean, it's not really my area. So what I did was I approached colleagues who were working in church archives, working in both diocesan and religious archives, and some academics that I know, to write short vignettes on each one of the executed leaders. And what the brief that we gave them was just to write, taking an event in the person's life or a relationship in their life, or even an item associated with a person as a point of departure, just to reflect on their faith and on their spirituality. And what we've come up with, as I say, is quite a lovely collection. In all, there were 18 contributors. There are 17 pieces. As I say, many of the contributors were church archivists. The Diocesan Archivist in Dublin, Noel Dowling, contributed. The assistant Jesuit archivist wrote a lovely piece on Michael Mallin, and it's from that piece that the title of the book is taken, The End of All Things Earthly. Michael Mallin wrote to his wife Agnes the night before he died, really quite a heartbreaking, heart-wrenching letter. My darling wife, pulse of my heart, this is the end of all things earthly. Sentence of death has been passed, and 3:15 tomorrow the sentence will be carried out by shooting, and so must Irishmen pay for trying to make Ireland a free nation. God's will be done. And you have the sense, not only with the piece on Michael Mallin, but on many of the others. There's a lovely piece on Con Colbert that was written by a most wonderful member of the Franciscan community in Merchants Quay, Father Joe McGrath. You have a sense that when everything was taken away from these leaders, when the sense of the struggle and the politics were all stripped away, they were left facing death, looking at the four walls of prison cells in Kilmainhan, that what was left to them was family, friendships, the love of family, friends, and for many of them, their faith. And some of the leaders, as I say, many of them were people of faith. So I'm rambling now, Shane. Where
that's as good as introduction to the whole.
Good.
Yeah, as I could want. I think we can imagine, and I think it gives listeners an idea of what the book is about. And just going back to it, I've read it through it, and like you said, it's quite a short. It's a very accessible book. I actually lent a copy of it to a colleague I work with,
right?
And that was exactly his reaction. It was so reader friendly, it was so accessible, and it was so easy to get into and just go through. As you said, it's only about 93, 94 pages.
Yeah.
But it's interesting actually that you picked out Michael Mallin, because I actually have to say that was the one. The pieces that were included with about him, actually, I have to say, were one of the ones that really struck me. And of course, sometimes, with the way that the leaders have been held up as patriots and heroes and almost canonized down through the years in Irish history, it's sometimes difficult to get to the people behind the images. And I loved the quote from his last letter to his wife, and he speaks of, "My heartstrings are torn to pieces when I think of you, and then of our manly James, happy-go-lucky John, shy, warm Una, daddy's girl, and oh, little Joseph, my little man, my little man.
Yeah.
Wife, dear wife, I cannot keep the tears back when I think of him. He will rest in my arms no more. To think I have to leave you to battle through the world with them without my help, what will you do, my own darling?" And to me, it is the most. It's a beautiful little piece, and it's a gateway into an image, as you said, of men that at the end all they had was their faith. And I suppose it's something that's sometimes overlooked when we talk about the Rising, because we're going to have there's been an awful lot of coverage of it, obviously, because we're in the centenary year, and of course facing into next weekend. Because the weekend after, rather, is the official commemorations in Dublin.
Yes,
but of course, one of the things, we sometimes forget is the very first line of the proclamation, which talks about Irish men and Irish women in the name of God and of the dead generations which it receives her tradition of nationhood. At the very beginning of the whole process of the Rising was this dedication and this recognition of the role of the divine in Irish culture and in Irish society and their understanding of the world, which I think is something perhaps that, as Archbishop Martin said back when he was being interviewed earlier in the year, we have kind of lost. Would you not think?
Yeah, it's. I suppose there's a certain embarrassment about things of faith. And Garodo Thuhig, in his introduction, there's a very good, succinct piece. And Garode says that, inevitably the centenary celebrations are viewed from, a lens of our time, that the celebrations are maybe seen through our own preoccupations, our own concerns, our own priorities. And it's maybe hard for us in the 21st century to enter into that different worldview, but there's no doubt, as you say, that many of the leaders, and you quoted from the proclamation itself, but that many of the leaders were people of faith. I just want to go back to Michael Mallin's piece. The little man that's mentioned in the letter is now a 102-year-old Jesuit
in Hong Kong.
In Hong Kong, that's right, and he's to be awarded the freedom of the city of Dublin.
Wow.
So, it's extraordinary to think of him. Now, I understand he's not going to come back to Ireland for that. I don't know that he travels very, very much now.
Well, at 102 years of age, I think we can understand.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it's quite, as I say, quite moving. The book was launched in Dublin. Now, there's a Limerick launch coming up on Tuesday, but it was launched in Dublin on Thursday. And the venue for the launch was the Capuchin Friary in Church Street. And Father Brian Shortall, the guardian of the community, spoke before Bishop Leahy launched the book, and it was really quite moving to hear him speak. He was the Church Street Friary was at the centre, really, there was quite a lot of fighting in the area of Church Street. He was saying when the fighting broke out on that Easter Monday, the friars, the Capuchins, they were actually at their dinner. And they came out, they heard gunshots, and they came out to look, and literally coming down the street to meet them were the walking wounded. And one of the first people, in fact, to die during the rising was a little baby of 2 years of age. His mother, I'm not in fact sure whether it was a little boy or a little girl, but they were on their way down to Fesh Matthew, which was on that Easter Monday in the Capuchin Hall beside the Friary, and the little 2-year-old was killed and caught in the crossfire. So when I heard Father Brian speaking, I suppose the hairs were standing on the back of my neck, really. It was really quite moving to be in the house where those Capuchin friars, the likes of Father Aloysius Travers, who features in this book, and so many of the others. The Capuchins were extraordinary. They set up a field hospital in the Father Matthew Hall, where they tended to the wounded. But not only them, there were very many priests, about 20 priests of the Diocese of Dublin, that ministered to the combatants, that consoled the people of Dublin. The Daughters of Charity, there was a wonderful set of photographs published in the Irish Times over the last 2 weeks, but there's a beautiful photograph of a member of the Sisters of Charity, the Daughters of Charity, of St. Vincent de Paul in her beautiful medieval splendour, those butterfly habits that they wore.
Habits, yes, with the huge veils on top of their head.
Absolutely, and she's distributing bread to a group of boys. And that was taken in the aftermath of the rising. So, as I say, I have been very surprised, actually, at how moved that I've been on various occasions, as I say, not least on the occasion of the launch in Dublin, listening to Father Brian Shortall speak. I suppose I was also very, very struck that the Capuchin successors in that house in Church Street, Brother Kevin Crowley has done great work with the homeless there. And Brother Kevin, to my mind, and the work that he's doing, I suppose you talk about the Republic, Shane, that the work that Brother Kevin is doing, to my mind, has redeems the Republic, and in very real way the work that the Capuchins have done there and that are doing there has done a great deal to redeem the image of the Church. And I know there were a couple of people there on Thursday night, who one or two in particular I know who maybe would have difficulties with the institutional church, but would have a great empathy and graw and attraction to the work of the friars. So on lots of different levels there were things going on for me. I haven't really processed everything.
Yeah.
But
the whole thing, of course, about faith and the rising, it's a theme which I suppose to some aspects, as you said, people, we're almost unaware of it now and almost ashamed of it to a certain extent. I suppose many people would have been familiar or aware of faith element for Pearse, particularly coming from his poetry and that whole imagery in his writings of, the idea of the rising as a blood sacrifice and the association and the metaphor he used with Christ and Calvary. And then again, others, we'd be familiar with just Mary Plunkett and I see his blood upon the rose and in the star the glories of his eyes, and that poem that every school person, every schoolboy and girl learns to a certain extent.
Yes.
But as you said, there was other elements like the whole thing of that you included Casement in the leaders that were killed. And of course, Casement was hanged in London.
Yes.
And I hadn't realised I don't know, did he convert or he came back to the church just before he died. And of course, the same for Connolly. I think actually Father Aloysius's encounter with Connolly is an interesting one.
Yeah, for me, I think there were a number of the executed leaders that were really eclipsed. I go back to Mallin. I don't know that I would have been conscious of Mallin at all. Father Aloysius Travers, there's a photograph of him in the book, and he's quite an extraordinary character. He was very involved in the temperance movement and really saw temperance really as part of the national movement. But his friendship with James Connolly, Travers was with Connolly when he was shot and was really quite moved. It was, as I said, he didn't know him before the Rising. He came to know him in the days afterwards, but really, as I say, was very, very moved by Connolly's death. As he says, all he could do afterwards was go and offer the holy sacrifice for him. But I mean, Connolly, as reported, the conversations reported by Father Travers, speaks very highly again of the ministry of priests and nuns in Dublin during the Rising. People like the young sculptor Willie Pearse. Now, I was in school in St. Clement's College. But going up and down there, I never realised that the Pearse family, the sculptors were responsible for one of the statues, the statue, I think, of St. Patrick on the facade of Mount St. Alphonsus. But Willie Pearse was really a very, very gifted sculptor. And I suppose the sense I have reading his story, he was such a young man when he died. And I suppose the loss in terms of promise. Also, Ned Daly, the Limerick man from Barrington Street, he was only 25 or 26. To bring it back to West Limerick, our own Con Colbert, yeah.
Well, to be honest, like you, I suppose it shows a deficit in some respects of the Irish education system. Con had never really registered with me, and I'm from, we're from Limerick. Yeah,
well, you see, I think I was trying to locate when part of my reticence in terms of taking on the project. It wasn't only the very, very short time frame. It wasn't only the fact that it's really not my area. But I would have been a little bit shy of 1916, and I was trying to put my finger on why that was the case. During the 25th anniversary of the Rising, I was in 5th year in school. And I can remember, and I was doing history, I can't remember one blessed thing about the 25th anniversary. It was a complete non-event.
Well, you mean the 25th now or the 75th?
The 75th, rather, I beg your pardon. Yes, sorry, the 75th, yeah. But again, I was thinking my time in school was framed by, on the one end, Enniskillen in 87, and the Warrington bombings. So, it was really it was a well that was poisoned by the Troubles. And I suppose what this project has given me, and I'm really delighted that I undertook it with Bishop Leahy's, I won't say, I don't know whether it's encouragement or, but it's given me the opportunity kind of to discover. I won't even say to rediscover, but to discover so much. And I think that's one of the very positive things about the decade of centenaries, that a lot of new material has come to light. There have been wonderful projects. Thinking of another project that the Limerick Diocesan Archive contributed to, it's called the Letters of 1916 project. They invited private individuals, private archives, public institutions to contribute material. It was digitised. It's now available online. And I think there's really a sense in which our understanding of the events surrounding 1916 have been deepened. And I suppose this little book, it occupies a place, a position between two extremes. The hagiography of the past. In my grandparents' house, above a piano that was never played, was a picture of it was a print of the leaders in Last Supper, and on the other wall was Pierce, and a little bit down from him Hanrahan. So there was a real sense in Irish homes in which they were almost canonised. And this little book occupies, I suppose, a space between that hagiography, that and on the other extreme, a present that's, as you've alluded to, that's maybe even embarrassed just to discuss the things of faith. Again, I'm rambling. Shane, bring me back to where.
That's it's as you said. It covers that space that's needed, I think, and it's an important contribution to the understanding of these men and women, because I think, like you said, for any of us of our generation and younger, David, as you said, the whole concept of the leaders and the concept of 1916, as you said, I think that's a great term used, was a poisoned well. And for us, we're dealing with where they were ambushed and they were, if you say, taken by a particular view of history and a particular political ideology. And I suppose that is the one benefit that comes out of the 1916 commemorations, is that it gives us an opportunity to take back the rising, if you like, from politics to a certain extent, and say, well, what is it that drove these men and women to do what in most assessments it was a military disaster and a military failure? And while it was for love of nation, love of place, love of country, there also, as this book I think brings out very much, love of faith. And it was interesting as well that one of Con Colbert's piece of advice to the men that he was mustering in Dublin before the rising was that they weren't allowed to go to Mass to receive communion at the same time, because it would be a dead giveaway to those that were watching them from the British and from the Dublin Metropolitan Police.
Right.
And it was just to go to show how important faith was. And I have to say, the whole Rebellion series that was done in RT, I was actually very put out and disappointed by the way they presented the faith aspect of it. It was a caricature of an attack on the Archbishop of Dublin and the priests of the Pro Cathedral in many respects. And it wasn't fair, like you said, about the contribution of the Carmelites, all the contributions of the priests of the Pro Cathedral to the care of the people that were affected, first and foremost, the ordinary citizenry of Dublin. But also the care that was given and the sacraments and the consolation, because they were such an important part for the men and women that fought during the Rising.
Yeah, it's. I didn't watch the series.
You didn't miss much.
But I suppose I suppose I'm struck by the at the turn of the century. The strands that were I'm just thinking of the person of Thomas Kent, and there's a wonderful piece. It's probably one of my favourite pieces. It's by an academic based in Galway, Gerard Barry, And he takes as a starting point Kent's temperance badge, his pioneer badge, which he gives to the chaplain in Cork before he dies. He's one of two of the leaders that doesn't. Casement, as you say, was executed in London, and Kent dies in Cork. But Kent's story is really, really interesting. He had a passion for Irish culture. Like, he emigrated to the States, and as a young man, a 19-year-old, he set up a Philo-Celtic society. Now, I don't know too many 19-year-olds today that are... So I'm really, I suppose, struck by the engagement. These were people that really engaged with life. There's an American author who I love, Bausch is his name. His first name escapes me. He has a lovely little book. If any of the listeners ever get a chance, or if you see it, it's called The Yellow Brick Road. There's a chapter in it, and it's on the 7 deadly sins, and he talks about sloth, a kind of a spiritual sloth or an intellectual sloth. You know, the response that you'll sometimes get from people. I was going to say teenagers, but that's to be a little bit unfair. You know, when you're talking about something and somebody says whatever, you know, there's a kind of the lack of engagement sometimes. What I'm struck about these people now, you can definitely disagree with their means, but I'm just very, very taken with how engaged they were, whether it was the love for the language or Irish culture or Irish music. These were people who kind of poured themselves into life. And I just find that, and whatever was happening, you had all of these strands, as I said, faith, music, language, all coming together and producing something quite unusual, I'd say, something quite wonderful. So had you the poets, you had the dreamers, you had the educationalists, you had the artists. So a really quite extraordinary moment. But as I say, I'm rambling again, Shane. You'll have to bring me home. I see.
Shane, to bring it to a close on this part of the program, I suppose I would say to you, it's a very well written. It's a beautiful collection of short vignettes. It's called The End of All Earthly Things. It's edited by David Bracken. David, you said the launch is going to be this week coming in Limerick. It's in Mary Eye.
It's in Mary Eye on Tuesday night at 6:30. If any of your listeners, they are most welcome to come along if they find themselves in town.
No problem.
And we'd be delighted to see them there.
Exactly. That's 6:30 on Tuesday night. And of course, as Gabo used to say, it's at all good bookshops.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
So, now, to close out this part of the programme, John, you have a piece of music.
I have a piece of music, and again, thanks so much for that, David. I really enjoyed that. I learned so much myself. I think it's beautiful. It's the first time that I've heard the face dimension being brought into this 1916 celebrations. But anyway, we'll finish up this part with a little bit of music to give both David and Shane a little bit of a break. We'll go out with one we thought might be appropriate. This one is entitled Faith of Our Fathers, and it's from Frank Patterson. So let's hit this one.
Faith of our fathers, we will love both friend and foe in all our strife, and preach thee to us love knows how, by kindly words and virtuous life. Faith of our fathers, holy faith, we will be true to thee till death. We will be true to thee till death. Faith of our fathers, holy faith, we will be true till
Sacred Space on West Limerick 102.